All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for your patience. In the interest of time, I see that it is 1:30 according to my clock, and so we're going to go ahead and get started. Today, we're going to have a great presentation on doing business in Mexico. And Miss Heidi, if you could go to the next one.
Good morning, good afternoon. It's not morning anymore, is it? I'm Heidi Whitman, the administrative coordinator. I'd like to introduce Rudy Ortiz. He is our immediate past chair of the Arkansas District Export Council. He has his own company. He assists companies in a wide variety of business-related areas, as well as in their international business exporting and trading. He teaches various export-related classes for the Arkansas District Export Council, as well as the AEDC, which is the Economic Development Commission Export Tech Training Program. He's a certified global business professional, as well as a U.S. Department of Commerce certified export and trade counselor, and he is fluent in Spanish. So take it away, Rudy.
Thank you very much, Heidi. Appreciate that. If we can go to the next slide. Okay, so this series of classes, export and supply chain related classes, is sponsored by the Arkansas Manufacturing Solutions Department, which is a department of the Arkansas Economic Development Commission. Their mission is to maximize enterprise value for manufacturers through innovation, operational excellence, sustainability, and leadership development. We're part of the Arkansas District Export Council, and we're the entity that's putting on this particular webinar on behalf of Arkansas Manufacturing Solutions. The Arkansas District Export Council is one of the 60 district export councils, or DECs as we call it, throughout the United States, and we're charged with encouraging and supporting the exporting of goods and services that will strengthen individual companies, stimulate U.S. economic growth, and most importantly, create jobs. Kind of a housekeeping deal. Make sure that if you have questions or comments that you submit those questions and comments via the questions panel on your computer. You should see that on, I think it's on the right-hand side. We will be recording this presentation, and normally we try to have the recording within 48 hours, but we have another really big event that we're putting on nationally, and it's probably going to take us a couple of more days, probably Monday or Tuesday, before we have the full recording available of this particular webinar. So just make sure that you get that when it's ready. I want to go ahead and present our featured speaker, Mr. Kenneth Duckworth. He's the Principal Commercial Officer at the U.S. Commercial Services at the U.S. Trade Center, and specifically, currently he's stationed at the U.S. Mexican Embassy. He, as I said before, is the Principal Commercial Officer, and he has a staff of 3 commercial officers and 9 LES commercial specialists delivering trade promotion services to U.S. exporters. He also manages the entire trade promotion program, including leading support for trade missions in Mexico. He has over 25 years of experience working in the private, government, and nonprofit sectors in the government relations, higher education, business, and international development. He has served in various capacities at U.S. embassies and consulates in Russia, Ukraine, Poland, Ethiopia, Kenya, and Korea. And prior to joining the commercial service in 2004, Mr. Duckworth was a foreign service officer with the U.S. Agency for International Development. Mr. Duckworth holds a BA in political science from George Washington University in DC and a master's degree in public and international affairs, Russian and East European studies from the University of Pittsburgh in Pennsylvania. He's also the author of several articles on post-communist reconstruction and development in Ukraine and Russia, a very timely topic right now. And he speaks Russian, Polish, and Spanish, which is why he's in Mexico. Ukrainian probably wouldn't do you a whole bunch of good there right now. But in any case, next slide. We're going to go ahead and go to Mr. Duckworth's presentation. And Kenneth, if you will take it away.
Let's see, I'm trying, but I don't see it. Here we go. All right, show my screen. How do I go backwards? All right, well, thank you, Rudy, for that introduction. So yeah, as Rudy pointed out in the introduction, I've been around some places that are in the news right now for many years, and Mexico is a new experience for me. What I can say is I'd much rather study Spanish than either of those two Slavic languages, because I don't have to deal with case systems and other arcane issues of pronunciation and language use. But ladies and gentlemen, bienvenidos a Mexico. We are the U.S. Commercial Service in Mexico City. I apologize ahead of time if some of you know some of this information, but I do cover it for the benefit of those who may be new to the commercial service. So I'll start a little bit discussing about who we are. The U.S. Commercial Service is the export and investment promotion arm of the U.S. government, and we are housed within the U.S. Department of Commerce's International Trade Administration. The Commercial Service consists of a network of U.S.-based trade professionals, and we are located at some 100 plus U.S. Export Assistance Centers, or USEACs, in major cities across the United States, as well as Foreign Commercial Service officers like myself, and teams of host country trade and business development experts at our embassies and consulates overseas. We have a threefold mission. It's to help U.S. exporters sell their products and services overseas, attract and promote inward foreign direct investment from abroad into the United States, and 3, protect and advocate for U.S. business interests abroad. All 3 of these lines of efforts focus on protecting, supporting, and generating U.S. jobs. In Mexico, the Commercial Service maintains a physical presence in 3 cities. The U.S. Embassy here in Mexico City, where I'm located. If I had a little pointer, I could point out, oh, there we go, Mexico City. As well as the U.S. Consulate General in Monterey, which covers the north of Mexico, and the U.S. Consulate General in Guadalajara. In addition to our standard trade and investment promotion services, given the high level of interest in and importance of the Mexican market to U.S. companies, we also host attachés dedicated to standards and conformity assessment, intellectual property, and digital issues. In pursuit of opening markets and protecting existing access for U.S. firms in Mexico, we offer our clients a wide range of products and services. Trade and investment, through trade and investment promotion, we match U.S. sellers and foreign buyers, or in reverse, and serve as an ombudsman connecting potential Mexican investors with important contacts in the United States. Through commercial diplomacy, we work to break down regulatory or other Mexican government barriers that hinder or prevent U.S. companies from doing business effectively. Through advocacy, we have a formal process through which we support U.S. firms interested in opportunities in Mexican government procurement. Under market access, we monitor and enforce Mexico's trade agreement commitments to ensure that U.S. companies can continue to compete on a level playing field. Through our intellectual property attaché, we work on protecting the intellectual property of American firms. We provide counseling and advice to U.S. companies for how to most effectively protect their IP in Mexico. And we help Mexico improve its IP registration and enforcement systems. Through enforcement and compliance, we ensure that trade is conducted fairly and that action is taken where we see dumping or illegal subsidies that create problems or barriers to trade between the United States and Mexico. And finally, we work to make sure that any U.S. technology that is sold to Mexico, especially where it may be subject to export controls, that it is being properly used, and that it is not being passed on to nefarious or criminal or prohibited organizations. Now we'll talk a little bit about Mexico. Although an overview of statistics and rankings is not the most exciting place to start, it is useful to begin this presentation reviewing some of Mexico's defining characteristics and talking about some recent trends. Mexico is home to approximately 126 million people, could be best described as a large, urban, semi-advanced economy that operates at two different, very distinct speeds. Mexico is home to many world-class, highly competitive manufacturing firms and global companies. And in some ways, Mexico is on par with developed country peers around the world. A growing middle class has emerged over the last 2 decades as successive governments have emphasized growth-related policies, have expanded Mexico's network of free trade agreements, and have worked to improve the business climate. That being said, economic and workforce informality remain endemic, and large swaths of the population continue to live below or at the poverty line and are largely excluded from the benefits of Mexico's emergence onto the global stage. Addressing these systemic issues remains the defining challenge that will determine the country's economic future. And the current government of President Andrés Manuel López Obrador has advanced an agenda focused on elevating the needs and interests of these groups above all else. This approach to governance has at times brought the government into conflict with the business community and is a significant departure from the most recent past administration, which left office in 2018. With respect to trade, let me start by saying that recent COVID-related economic impacts notwithstanding, we are generally optimistic about Mexico as a market for U.S. exporters. Mexico was our second largest goods trading partner and second largest destination for U.S. goods export in 2021. Accounting for services as well, the United States and Mexico traded $700 billion in 2021, positioning Mexico as the third largest overall U.S. trading partner after Canada and China. That's an astronomical amount of bilateral trade, accounting for more than $1.9 billion a day, or $1.3 million per minute. And while large multinational corporations certainly contribute to this trade volume, it's worth noting that according to the U.S. Department of Commerce figures, more than 500,000 U.S. small and medium businesses export to Mexico every year. Further underscoring the importance of our commercial relationship with Mexico, you can see from this graph here that U.S. exports to Mexico trailed only Canada in 2021 and far surpassed total U.S. merchandise exports to China. It is also worth highlighting here something that I will talk about in a minute, the importance of thinking about North America as an integrated commercial region. Particularly since the entry into force of the North American Free Trade Agreement in 1994, which was replaced by the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement in July 2020, cross-border supply chains have flourished. U.S. trade with Mexico and Canada has grown exponentially, and we increasingly make things together rather than just exchanging finished goods and services. Taking a closer look at the composition of U.S. trade with Mexico, you can see that there is a fair amount of overlap between industry sectors in which U.S. exports and imports are concentrated. This again is indicative of just how well established these cross-border supply chains really are and how dependent our respective economies have become upon one another in certain areas. I will get to a more detailed examination of our best prospect sectors for U.S. exporters. in a moment, but it is important that companies seeking to explore opportunities in the Mexican market understand this macro perspective. Perhaps it goes without saying, given the total volume of trade, but the importance of Mexico as a destination for U.S. exports extends deep into the U.S. heartland. While California, Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas all trade extensively with our southern neighbor, Mexico remains the first or second largest export market for a total of 25 states spread throughout all geographic corners of the country in 2021.
And Kenneth, if I can break in for a second,
Sure.
obviously we have people who are attending this webinar from all over the United States and even other parts of the world. But this is being put on currently by the Arkansas District Export Council. And in terms of Arkansas, Mexico is Arkansas's number 2 market, just like it shows there on the graph. And this may be a little bit dated, but $745 million of exports to Mexico. I mean, that's a significant percentage. And in Arkansas, which is a relatively small state, and we have a population of about 3 million in the entire state, and yet the trade between Mexico and Canada and the United States accounts for 120,000 jobs in Arkansas. So that's not a significant that's a very significant number. And in agriculture, obviously, Arkansas is a big ag state. It represents 17% to Mexico. So some very, very significant numbers all over the area, and including Arkansas.
Mm-hmm. Okay. One of the things that has become a significant part of our trade relations with Canada and with Mexico is that, as we said, we're looking at North America as one economic region. We have integrated supply chains across all 3 countries. Mexico happens to be the region's manufacturing powerhouse. The country supports a strong manufacturing base across numerous industry sectors, with heavily integrated cross-border supply chains in the autos and auto parts, aerospace, and consumer electronics industries. In fact, Mexico exports more manufacturing goods than the rest of Latin America combined, many of which contain a large percentage of U.S. produced and supplied content. To put this production in perspective, Mexico is the 6th largest producer of passenger vehicles, the world's 2nd largest producer of televisions, the largest market for U.S. produced auto parts, and a top market for U.S. defense products, equipment, and services. So why should your company or any company consider exporting to Mexico? Beyond supply chains and manufacturing, there are a number of other reasons that you would seriously consider Mexico as an export market. None of these are particularly challenging to guess, but they warrant discussion. First, geographic proximity and cost. Because it is our next door neighbor, business travel to Mexico is generally easy, inexpensive, and convenient. And Mexico's location has a favorable impact on the price of logistics and other transportation services. Mexico's market size, diversity, and demand for U.S. exports are also another attraction. Most U.S. products and services can find ample opportunity, and a growing middle class has increasingly large appetite for U.S. produced goods and services. It's sort of interesting for me here that we have brands, U.S. brands, well-known legacy brands, such as Sears and Radio Shack, that actually are still operating here as operating companies. Part of it has to do with the ownership structure of how they were set up years ago in Mexico, but it's just an example of the recognition of U.S. products, services, and brands here in Mexico, that you see those still here and working successfully. Of course, we also have cultural and strong people-to-people connections. There's a high degree of familiarity with U.S. brands, as I just mentioned, and marketing and ways of doing business that provide benefits to U.S. firms. Under the USMCA, the U.S. Mexico-Canada agreement, U.S. qualifying goods benefit from zero duties, and long-standing trade agreement relationships provide an extra degree of business, climate transparency, and predictability. And Mexico is relatively economically and politically stable. It has a generally low but stable rate of economic growth and no major political turmoil for several decades. We do watch very carefully the impact of the AMLO government. AMLO is the name that we call the Mexican president. It's a diminutive, I guess, or a contraction of his first initials. So we are carefully watching his government policies, particularly in areas that are heavily regulated or politically important in Mexico, and those include energy, among others. So the major Mexican commercial centers you see here on this map are Mexico City, Monterey, and Guadalajara. U.S. exporters without previous experience in Mexico often underappreciate the size, diversity, and distinct characteristics and opportunities to be found in different parts of the country. This is clearly not an exhaustive list of the country's major commercial centers, but they are Mexico's 3 largest cities and the locations where the commercial service has stationed personnel in Mexico. Mexico City, located in the heart of Mexico, in the Valley of Mexico, is the country's political and economic capital. It is a natural starting point for any company interested in Mexico. It is a major manufacturing and distribution center, and it is large, and with more than 22 million people, it is one of the largest cities in the world. It is centrally located near a number of other industrial centers, such as Toluca, Puebla, and Querétaro. Monterey in the north is the industrial and trade hub for the U.S.-Mexican border. It is well known for its, and I'll put in quotes, pro-business attitude, and is home to major automotive, household appliance, electronic equipment, packaging, and heavy manufacturing industries. Guadalajara in the west is Mexico's agricultural heartland and also its Silicon Valley. It's home to major research and development centers, distribution and logistics service providers, and agribusiness, electronics, industrial process controls, and food processing and packaging firm. It is the location of the largest expo center in Latin America, and it hosts many regional trade shows.
Yeah. Kenneth, if I can break in for a second, while this particular webinar does not have a strict supply chain focus, very obviously, as we saw in one of the earlier slides, there's a lot of stuff that it goes from the United States to Mexico, is processed, and then is returned back to the United States, and vice versa. Mexico being obviously in close proximity to the United States is a really important partner, looking at things strictly from a supply chain perspective, aside from all the things that you've described. So when you're considering trying to shorten the length of time and expense in having products that you're bringing from another country into the United States and vice versa, Mexico and Canada, of course, are top markets for your supply chain considerations.
Okay. I think I was just discussing that. Now we'll move on. Oh, no, sorry. I got ahead of myself. These are the same cities starred on a map of Mexico for those who may not be familiar with Mexico's geography. And while commercial service specialists in Mexico are responsible for their industries countrywide, our offices in Monterey and Guadalajara regularly assist U.S. firms with interest in the border region and or Western Mexico, respectively. These are some of the top prospect sectors that we see as best prospects for U.S. exporters. As you can see, these range from agribusiness and aerospace to cosmetics and packaging equipment. We describe each one of these industry sectors in detail in our annual country commercial guide, which can be accessed for free on our website, trade.gov/Mexico. If you're interested in specific information by subsector, it is a good place to start. Some of the market entry strategies for getting into Mexico. It's very important to have a Mexico presence. The best strategy to enter the Mexican market is to find a local representative or distributor. With this, buyers feel secure that initial training, spare parts, and service will be provided. And this is especially important for those who are bidding on government contracts. You may also need to have local or regional representatives. Mexico is a very diverse country, and there are very strong regional differences across the country. And you may find that representation locally will yield better results than a single nationwide distributor. It's not always effective to have one representative in Mexico City to cover the whole of Mexico, for example. And price, while important, is not necessarily the deciding factor. Other factors include after-sales service, marketing support, and help with product launch, among others. You should be prepared to provide brochures, catalogs, and printed materials in Spanish, and have your websites international user-friendly. You should use common international business sense when you are meeting with people. Take the time to cultivate strong long-term relationships. People-to-people connections are key. Mexican companies are very hierarchical, so you need to make sure you're dealing with the right person. Now, we often get questions about safety in Mexico. This slide shows comparisons of, well, these are homicide rates compared, a comparison between Mexico City and various other major US cities, and you can see that in many cases, or most, that Mexico has a lower per capita homicide rate than we do in some of our larger cities. But we do think that Mexico City, Guadalajara, Monterey, and other important business hubs are safe for personal and professional travel. But we do think everyone should use common sense and consult the State Department's travel warning website for detailed safety and security guidance. Mexico is doing well with COVID. Everything now is, Mexico during the height of the crisis developed a stoplight system where red was maximum restrictions, and that's when I arrived here in October of 2020. Everything was closed except for basically pharmacies, gas stations, and supermarkets. Now with the countries at the green level, so pretty much everything is at a normal operational level, although you'll find, for example, when you fly into Mexico from the US, you may not be required to wear a mask on the plane, but when you arrive to the airport in Mexico City, you will have to put a mask on when you get ready to go through passport and customs and while you're in the airport terminal, as well as any other indoor venues within Mexico City itself. Foreign direct investment from Mexico, I think is important for me to touch on. As with trade, we have a healthy bilateral relationship when it comes to FDI. As of 2020, Mexico maintained a stock of more than $42.1 billion FDI in the United States and supporting some 82,000 US jobs. Through our Select USA investment promotion program, we have an investment promotion team at the U.S. Embassy here in Mexico City that actively works to continue to expand this number, and they assist interested Mexican investors to expand their footprint in the United States. These were some of the resources that I mentioned during my presentation. Our country commercial guide is located on our Commercial Service Mexico website, trade.gov/Mexico. It provides detailed information on exporting to Mexico, best prospect industry profiles, contact information for the appropriate sector specialists here at CS Mexico. If you were just going into the website above, you would find it there. And finally, I mentioned the State Department Mexico travel page, which you would find detailed travel guidance, resources, and other important information. Please feel free at any time to reach out to me directly. I gave myself a promotion, I'm sorry. I should have fixed that later. I am the Principal Commercial Officer here in Mexico City, and I'm ready to receive your inquiries or connections to our industry specialist experts. Thank you very much for your time and attention. If there are questions for Rudy or myself, I'd be happy to
Yeah,
entertain them.
Kenneth, there is at least one question that I'm seeing right now, and let you do a first pass on it. The question is, what's the primary barrier for the triad, meaning the three countries, Canada, United States, and Mexico, in maximizing the benefit of the USMCA for the region to improve inshoring and nearshoring to reduce the dependence of imports outside our region? And that's Mr. Ken Westgrod.
Yeah, I mean that is a big topic of discussion among well, I can't speak for Canada, but between the U.S. and Mexico in the high level economic dialogue, inshoring and nearshoring is a key topic of discussion. We, as the U.S. Commercial Service, have difficulty by assisting U.S. firms that may want to, say, move production from China to Mexico, because by law we cannot help U.S. companies establish overseas operations. We are strictly focused on exports and inward direct investment into the U.S. But through the U.S., the other sections of the embassy are certainly working on this, and there's diplomatic efforts to look at what we can do to sort of promote what the ambassador calls, the factory North America kind of concept, to lessen our dependence on manufacturing and key supply chain participants that are further afield than our immediate neighbors. I hope that answers the question, at least somewhat.
Very good. Sort of an aligned comment that I see sometimes is that someone in the United States will be exporting, widgets to Mexico or Canada, and yet not receive the low tariff, no tariff that they're entitled to, and they wonder why that is. And in many cases, if not most cases, what we're finding out is that companies they're using maybe freight forwarders, and those freight forwarders are, for whatever reason, not putting in the certificate of origin for the good, and if they don't do that, then they don't get the zero tariff applied.
And it's also important that when you do your documentation for exports to Mexico, that you have the correct HS codes, and that you're applying the correct ones, because that will also run you into problems, both in getting your goods into the country and as well as whether or not you qualify for the duty-free treatment. And we have an expert on that who serves as a troubleshooter for U.S. companies when they come across individual problems trying to get products into Mexico, who can help you resolve those issues. And his name is Manny Vasquez. He's an excellent resource, and he's located at our Consulate General in Monterey.
Well, I want to go ahead and write that name myself.
If you went on our website, you'd see, and we actually have a section. I think it's either you can call him directly, or he also has like a frequently asked questions page. I think it's called Ask Manny.
Fantastic. Well, I think that a lot of times people would just kind of assume that if they're using a freight forwarder, the freight forwarder is going to do what's in the person's best interest, but that may or may not be true. And history kind of shows that that's not always the case. So, at the end of the day, it's up to you to make sure that whatever documentation is going to provide the benefit of the USMCA, that you make sure that that's actually submitted along with whatever other documentation is needed.
I wonder how many of our listeners are already exporting to Mexico.
Raise your hand so we can see your hand.
Well, we
have a poll, I think.
Okay.
We can post a poll if you would like.
Yeah. Now we have another question. It says, when you say the correct HS code, I assume you mean the first 6 digits. And obviously that is what's, I guess you could say, international is the first 6 digits, and then the specific country will add 2 to 4 additional digits
Mhm.
above that. But yes, that is what Kenneth means when he's talking about
Mhm.
the correct HS codes.
But the other thing is, I know that Mexico has, I guess, every couple of years, countries around the world update this harmonized tariff system, and they update the codes and they change some of them. You know, in some minor ways, you have to make sure you're using the most up-to-date code and the most recent version of the tariff schedule.
Kenneth, what would be, given what you just said, what would be the best way for an American company to be assured that the patent leather shoes that they've been shipping to Mexico all this time and has had a specific HS code, where can they go to assure themselves that that product, whose HS code might have changed according to what you just said, where can they go to get the latest and greatest HS code
So I would
designation?
check. I would check with, as I said, Manny Vasquez in our Monterey office, and he would know where to send you on that, or if he doesn't have it himself.
Excellent. Now, I think at this point, Kenneth, we're going to wrap this up. It does not appear as if we have any more questions.
I
Um,
see a few more.
Oh yes, they just cropped up. My apologies. Yeah, they just suddenly cropped up on my screen here. It says here, it says, what is the status of Mexico's Tehuantepec Isthmus Rail Corridor? Any idea on completion date? That's pretty specific.
Yeah, I don't. I actually have one specific expert within this office who focuses on that. Her name is Carrie Erun or Diana Leon. I would say that this project is in its, we're in this sort of procurement phase for it. So I don't know what the date of completion is, but if you wanted to reach out directly to Deanna, I'm certain she can provide you with much more detailed information than I'm able to do here.
Yeah, why don't we do this, uh, Kenneth? If you will provide me the contact information for Manny and Deanna,
Mm-hmm.
then we can pass it on to
Sure.
whoever
Mm-hmm.
contacts us.
Yep.
Or if you folks out there want to contact Kenneth directly, that's okay too. And we'll be providing his contact information again shortly. The next question here, now that they're popping up, how is the integration of strategic materials coming along within US-Mexico? And then it goes on to make the statement, after COVID-19, the US and Canada have been working on this strategic supply alternatives. How is Mexico playing a role in that?
That's a question that's beyond me
Okay. No, yeah,
at this point.
we don't know it all, do we?
We don't
But
know it all, but I
that's for
think that's
sure.
something that's being discussed at, as I mentioned, our high-level economic dialogue, which where supply chains are a key component of the discussion among the three countries.
Right. And what I will do is we'll have copies of these questions, especially these last two questions,
Yeah,
and
and I
we'll
can follow up with the right
perfect,
people.
perfect.
Um,
Heidi, I assume that we will have a copy of these questions. Is that correct?
yes, we certainly will. And Kenneth, if you can send me the emails of any relevant colleagues who might be able to help answer questions,
Sure.
I can send them to everyone.
Yes.
Well, that's great. I think, Ms. Heidi, unless you see something different,
I
I
see
think,
one more. Oh no, nope, that's not a question, that's a statement.
yeah, okay.
But
Very,
we can, if you would like, I've already got it set up so that you can see, people can raise their hands and say if they're already exporting to Mexico.
oh, okay.
Do that just for fun, since we
Yeah,
have.
absolutely. Go ahead and make it so.
All right, let's, first we got to share my screen. All right, then we're going to launch the poll. And then you just go ahead and click Yes or no?
I suspect that should be enough time.
Okay. So, all right. So then we'll close the poll. And okay, so we got 48% yes, 46% yes, 54% no.
Okay, pretty evenly divided there. That's interesting.
There's a lot of people who need this information. That's a good thing.
Well, for sure, and one of the reasons that we did just very recently, Canada, doing business in Canada, and now doing business in Mexico, is in particular for those companies that are either really not doing too much exporting, are doing kind of reactive exporting. Canada and Mexico are great places to start for a variety of reasons, not the least of which is the USMCA, its ability to create a flatter structure or a fairer structure, in the sense that you don't have to battle against excessive tariffs and things like that. So, trying to enter or expand into Canada and Mexican markets is a really, really good thing. And, I think that this is probably somewhat common knowledge, but, wealth wealth is not created by moving money from one pocket to the other. For instance, if I teach somebody in Arkansas how to beat somebody in Maine, that's just kind of moving money around. That's not really the creation of wealth. But when we bring monies from elsewhere, i.e. from Canada, Mexico, or anywhere else, that's how wealth is created in the United States, and the United States becomes a more prosperous country. That is what the District Export Council and the Arkansas Manufacturing Solutions and the U.S. Commercial Service and the Arkansas World Trade Center, that's what we're all about, is making sure that there is more wealth for Arkansas and the United States, and therefore more jobs. So we anything that we can do to help companies either in Arkansas or outside of Arkansas to export, we're here to help. And as I said before, the Arkansas District Export Council is just one of 60 district export councils throughout the United States. And so there is a district export council in every state, and some states I think have two. California I think has two district export councils, or what we call DECs, because obviously they're a very large, long, and populous state. So if you're currently looking at this webinar, attending this webinar from somewhere other than Arkansas, you can be assured that there is a district export council and people there who are ready to help you in any way they can, provide information, to educate you, to be a mentor, and to assist in every way possible. And I think with that, Kenneth, unless you have any last comments.
Yeah, I would just add on there, we probably would have want to had at least a contact for your Arkansas Export Assistance Center in Little Rock,
Right.
as among other resources, beyond what we've got here.
Although right now we are having to use Oklahoma's USIAC office, because our guy
We're in
with
transition. Yeah, as it turns out, the previous guy for the commercial services retired, and they just finished hiring his replacement. He will be starting, I believe, on the 22nd, which is not very long from now, and kind of go from there. In the meantime, we're happy to hook you up with the commercial service. You can contact us. Our contact information, the Arkansas District Export Council. There is also Heidi's direct information, and mine as well. I'm the chair of the Education Committee for the Arkansas District Export Council. Feel free to contact any of us, Kenneth, and we will put you in contact with whatever resource is necessary to answer your questions or provide you whatever assistance you need. All right. Well, thank you so much for attending today's webinar. I do want to let you know that in June, probably the 22nd of June, I think is what we currently have it scheduled for, we will have another very comprehensive webinar called Grow Your Exports. It's kind of intended for people who are somewhat early stage into exporting and really need some more guidance, some more specific guidance, and a variety of knowledge on logistics, contracts, marketing, developing a global infrastructure, and a number of other key issues that someone who is relatively new to exporting would be useful for them to know to make as few mistakes as possible. So do kind of be on the lookout for that. Right now, I think we have it scheduled for the 22nd of June, but you'll start seeing stuff on it probably 3-4 weeks out. So be on the lookout for that. And once again, it's called Grow Your Exports. In any
Oh,
case, go
Rudy, we
ahead.
have one more question.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yes.
Oh, okay. I see one more. It says one more. How is the BIY American Buy American clause affecting the business environment in Mexico, particularly in the sector of electric vehicles?
Oh, that's actually a controversial. It's not really the Buy American, but I know that under, I think, the USMCA, and of course under the current administration, U.S. administration, there's a push for increasing the manufacture of electric vehicles within the United States. And that is proving to be a source of controversy under the U.S.-Mexico-Canada agreement between the U.S. and Mexico as to whether components and things that are made in Mexico would meet the U.S. content requirement that the U.S. administration is pushing. So that sort of needs to be resolved, and that's, I think, something that is also being discussed at a higher level. And I believe also that Mexico may be looking to bring a complaint under USMCA about this, and we'll see how that gets resolved.
Excellent. I think, Heidi, that's all the questions that I see, unless you see any additional ones.
Oh, wait a minute. Wait, there's one more.
Kenneth Wengrad just informed us that I'm mistaken. There are not 2 decks in California. There are 5. I actually was not aware of that. So, once again, there's a deck in every state. There's at least one, and in huge places like California, more than one. So, feel free to contact your district export council if you're outside the Arkansas area, and they will be very, very happy to get in contact with you and help you in multiple ways and to give you information. As a matter of fact, one of the persons who's been asking questions, Ernesto Pinal, who's one of my colleagues from the National District Export Council, is on the deck in Idaho. So he's a great resource as well on a multitude of areas. And so sometimes he helps us by prompting us with questions. And today was one of those days. Ernesto, thanks so much for that. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much again for attending today's webinar. Feel free to contact us with anything any questions that you might have, or if you need any kind of assistance. In the meanwhile, I want to remind everyone that hopefully by Monday, probably Tuesday, worst case, we will have released the recording of this particular webinar so that you'll have it as a permanent resource, and so that you can go over it and see if there was something that some additional information that you didn't have time to write down, and you'll be able to have access to that. And once again, this particular screenshot shows the emails of every one of the organizations involved here and persons involved here. Feel free to contact us with any questions that you might have. Have a great day, and we will see you on the next one on June 22nd. Grow Your Exports. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.